Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
Middle of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Wednesday, May 28th, 2020. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. And once again, we're going to be talking a bunch about the Fed today, Jason.
We call this a just-in-time show, Carol Massar, and we bring you the latest and greatest as it happens.
I didn't know you were into inventory.
What's that?
I didn't know you were into inventory.
Absolutely, into inventory. And, you know, fast twitch, that's what we do here at Bloomberg. We're going to give you those Beige Book results, and it's always an interesting look, as you say, into what's actually happening. And Mike McKee, love catching up with him.
Yeah, and he caught up with New York Fed President John Williams, so we're going to hear about that conversation on a Beige Book day. So we'll break down those headlines. Let's get, though, to your headlines when it comes to the markets. Let's bring in Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. Here's what's going on. Happy Wednesday to you both. We've got NASDAQ lower, the Dow, the S&P, both higher right now. U.S. stocks trading mixed. Investors shying away from those high-flying tech names in favor of equities most beaten down by the coronavirus pandemic. Cruise lines, airlines are among them. Rising tensions, though, with China also adding to pressure on multinational companies. But here's where equity markets stand. The S&P at 3,009, up 17. That's a gain of 0.6%. NASDAQ down 12, a drop of 0.1%. The Dow up 297 points now, up by 1.1%. 10-year up 730 seconds. The yield right now 0.67%. We've got gold up 0.1%, $17.12 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude now trading lower by just about 4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. This portion is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Well, we promised you Mike McKee. We're going to deliver Mike McKee. He's here with us, international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg. Joining us on the phone from New York City, as is Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg. He is joining us from New Jersey. So, Dave, I got to ask you, what does this trade look like before we hear from Mr. McKee?
And I just want to squeeze in a headline because the Fed does say economic activity declined in all districts. So that's not a big surprise. So, Dave, with that, let's talk about the markets.
Well, I mean, Charlie was talking about how some of the beaten down stocks are really sort of leading the way. One group that's notable in that score is retail. I mean, you look at Nordstrom and Kohl's, you're talking about two of the three biggest gains in the S&P 500, and the third one belongs to the Gap. I mean, when was the last time you saw that kind of a move from the group? And finance really jumps out. It's the best performer among the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500. Citigroup leading the way among the largest banks. It's up almost 7%. You're seeing some pretty solid gains among regional lenders as well. Regions Financial, to name one, up about 7.5% at the moment. So, it's interesting to see this kind of a shift into these areas of the market and away from, the technology companies which have kind of led the way now for years and where there's been real concern that they might be a bit too dominant here. You look at the stocks. I mean, Amazon.com, for example, down 0.9% at the moment. So, a different kind of feel this week to what we've been seeing more over time, and certainly today a reflection of that.
All right, so let's talk to Michael McKee because he caught up with the New York Fed President John Williams. Let's first get to a little snippet of that interview. He talked about the yield curve.
Well, I think we have a lot of options in terms of our toolkit, whether, we've used obviously forward guidance of different types in the past. We've clearly used, asset purchases to affect financial conditions in the past. And the yield curve control, which has now been used in a few other countries, is I think, a tool that could potentially complement forward guidance and or other policy action. So this is something that obviously we're thinking very hard about.
All right, and that was Fed President John Williams, New York Fed President John Williams, speaking earlier with Michael McKee. We're speaking now with Michael McKee. All right, so we heard a little bit of sound there. Mike, sort of synthesize for us what you heard from President Williams, what you're seeing in the Beige Book. Like, what's the picture that we get of the economy? What do we need to know?
Well, I think the picture of the economy is pretty much what we all know, that it was in terrible shape in the last month. The Beige Book reflects conditions that were, and that's why they're saying activity declined everywhere, particularly in the leisure and hospitality sector, it says. We knew that, and the numbers we're getting day to day reflect that. What Williams said that was interesting is that we may be close to the bottom. He caveated that, saying it's very hard to tell these days, but maybe May, June is the trough, and then we start to go up again. And he said he thought we would see a pretty significant rebound in the second half of the year. So a little more optimism than we've heard from some of the other Fed people that we've spoken to recently about where things are going.
So, Mike, when you look at statistics that are out there, the economic statistics, we know they're bad. But, I mean, when you hear what John Williams had to say, does it make sense to you in terms of maybe we are at a bottom and maybe we, start to think about recovery, certainly in the second half?
Well, you kind of hope that's the case. We're seeing more and more places open up. It's very slow. When you look at the high-frequency numbers, there's not a lot of economic activity yet. But anything is better than nothing, and nothing is what we had. The question is really one of psychology, and John made this point, that we can't forecast this because we don't know, since we've never had this before, how people are going to react. Are you going to go out and shop? We know the 20-somethings will go stand on a corner or sit in a swimming pool, but will anybody else really go out and spend the kind of money that they were spending? If they do, then you get something of a rebound. You have to be careful that, if you fall by if you have $10 and you lose 50% of it, you got $5, and if you gain back 50%, you only got $7.50. So you can have a recovery, but you're not going to be where you were. But it could start to come back.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point too, and it does not make these guys' jobs any easier. Michael McKee, thank you so much. Really appreciate those insights. And check out Mike's entire interview. It was wide-ranging with Fed President John Williams. Dave Wilson, before we let you scoot, give us a preview of what we're going to hear later in the show on your chart and stock of the day segments.
Well, when it comes to the chart, the question is whether the fear that investors were feeling a couple of months ago has sort of shifted too far in the other direction. And as far as the stock of the day goes, what happens when people expect a takeover and don't get one? That's what we'll be talking about.
Ooh, that's good stuff.
Good teases.
All right, looking forward to that. I do want to mention a headline to the Huawei CFO failing to persuade a Canadian judge to end extradition proceedings, so that will keep her under house arrest in Vancouver as the fight against U.S. efforts to prosecute her moves forward. So moving ahead. So that's kind of interesting with the increased U.S.-China tensions that are already out there, right?
Well, and Huawei has been in the midst of that from the beginning and such a key player in all of those. Speaking of tech, that's a big story today, and one we're going to talk about later with Sarah Fryer. Twitter, there's a little bit of tech, a little bit of politics in that one. That's a WOA story.
Totally. Twitter going head-to-head with President Trump. Speaking of POTUS, Josh Green out with another great story. It's in the magazine. It's about Trump's mission to lure black voters. He is definitely looking ahead to November. It's also a big day for space exploration. And SpaceX and Elon Musk, we're going to check in with Ashley Vance. That takeoff expected later on today. And then we've got HPQ earnings after the closing bell.
Yeah, so a lot to get to, and we're going to round out the show with the governor of Connecticut, Ned Lamont. All right, let's quickly do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day. One number that tells us a lot. Today's number, Carol, is 83, looking west for this one.
Right, 83 years ago today. Check this out. The Golden Gate Bridge officially opened 83 years ago. After 5 years of construction, the span that connects the city of San Francisco to Marin County, California, was open to pedestrians on May 27th, 1937. At the time, that 4,200-foot span was the longest suspension bridge in the world, and about 200,000 pedestrians crossed it on its first day.
It's your second favorite thing in San Francisco after avocado toast. In any case. All right.
True.
Much more to come. First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. The House of Representatives delayed consideration of a bill to extend surveillance warrants in national security cases in light of President Trump's veto threat to take up a measure that is bipartisan, that is, censure of China for human rights violations. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Democrat Brad Sherman denounced the mistreatment of China's Uyghur minority.
The goal of this inhumane campaign is clear: to erase all evidence of their unique language, culture, history, and religion. It is horrific.
Republican Michael McCall.
These ethnic minorities have been rounded up and forced into concentration camps where they are brainwashed with state propaganda. They live under a complete Orwellian surveillance program.
The suppression of Hong Kong gave additional impetus, as did China's initial denial of coronavirus. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
The House of Representatives delaying consideration of a bill to extend surveillance warrants, and with thunder threatening a delay, 2 NASA astronauts have made their way to the launch pad for the liftoff of a SpaceX rocket ship this afternoon on a history-making flight to the International Space Station, seen as a giant leap forward for the booming business of commercial space travel. Space veterans Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are scheduled to ride into orbit aboard the brand-new Dragon capsule on top of a Falcon 9 rocket, lifting off at 4:33 p.m. Florida time. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
To be in the markets now, you need nerves of steel.
I mean, we're not supposed to be hysterical.
And Bloomberg surveillance.
Let's just start with something extreme.
What are you comparing this to?
Bloomberg surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
A lot of economists are just throwing up their hands and saying, we don't know.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
Your call, your message to your clients on a morning like this morning.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, BloombergRadio.com, and now watch us on Bloomberg Television.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. How long?
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Thanks to National Lottery players, the Emerald Centre are now providing emergency food supplies and support for people in Bedfordshire like Alan. Thank you. And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects in England and across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, What do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks now higher across the board. NASDAQ best level of the day, up 14 points right now. That is a gain of just about 0.1%. NASDAQ now at 93.53. S&P at 3,015, up 23 points, up 0.8%. The Dow advancing 320 points, now up by 1.3%. Stocks higher. Chip makers erasing losses after Micron Technology forecast earnings ahead of estimates, adding to optimism the pandemic's damage to the economy has peaked. Right now we have got the 10-year yield 0.67% of 8.30 seconds. Gold up 0.2%, 17.13 the ounce, and a 4% drop now for West Texas Intermediate crude, down $1.37 a barrel at 32.98. So again, recapping here, equities higher, NASDAQ turning around, S&P up 23, up 0.8%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Wednesday. Now, Anthony Fauci, the U.S. government's top infectious disease expert, he did say there's a good chance a vaccine might be deployable by November or December. So that is among our headlines when it comes to COVID-19 on this Wednesday. Washington State, as you know, has been at the center of the virus in the U.S. from day one, specifically at the Providence Regional Medical Center in Everett, that hospital. It is part of one of the largest healthcare systems in the U.S. Let's talk about the virus and where we are. Dr. Joanne Roberts is Chief Quality Officer at Providence St. Joseph Health. She joins us on the phone from Renton, Washington. Dr. Roberts, nice to have you here with Jason and myself. There are a few headlines out there today. Certainly in some places like Brazil, we see cases soaring. Tell us about what you think is the most important in terms of where we are with the pandemic.
Well, thanks so much, Carol. As far as where I think we are with the spread of the pandemic, I think by and large, most of our country has done really well in physical distancing and masking and other areas. I think we all know the challenges of bringing our country together around this. I think we in healthcare are looking to early to mid-June to see what the effects are of the opening up that we really saw this Memorial Day, because everything that we do today will show up 2 or 3 weeks later in our hospitals when people get sick and start coming in. And we're watching that closely day by day.
And so, Dr. Roberts, as Carol said at the top, you guys were the first to see cases here in the United States. What have you learned about treatment? What have you learned about this disease that may be useful to those of us who weren't on the front end as much?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the mass media is borne out with us locally as well. We just this morning had a discussion of the use of remdesivir. As you know, that's being released more and more through Gilead. And we believe we have enough doses on hand to treat all of our patients that we currently have. It's not a magic bullet. It doesn't preclude any of the things that we all need to do around masking and social distancing. But it does seem to at least lower the length of stay in our hospitals. And we are expecting more reports out soon, hopefully, that remdesivir will actually improve the mortality rates and decrease the number of deaths. But it's just one piece of a bigger story that continues to evolve week by week.
And how soon will we really know the efficacy of remdesivir? Is it weeks? Is it months? Like, what's the timeline there?
I think, like I said, I think every week we see more science being released, more studies being completed. I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll see more of the story around remdesivir, as well as other agents that are in the pipeline.
Is a second wave a given?
Yes, it is. I think we believe there's no doubt that a second wave will come. We don't know when it will come. We don't know how big it will be, but we are certainly putting together plans inside of Providence to try to detect the second wave early and to prepare for it. As you know, in the 1918 flu pandemic, it was the second wave that was the big killer. 5 times as many people died in the second wave as in the first wave. And so we're not out of the woods yet. We're in a breathing space where we can all get ready for the next wave.
So what's the science behind that a second wave is more deadly? And would that necessarily be the case with this virus?
We don't know. We're in a position of not knowing what the second wave will look like. I wouldn't say I don't think any of us expect the second wave will be worse, but we have to prepare as if it could be worse.
And so what do you do to prepare as someone at a hospital and thinking about society? And I know you guys have been really good about advising the local authorities there. And I know that you and your colleagues have been advising a lot of folks across the country. What are you telling them from a public policy perspective to do to mute the effect of the second wave?
Well, I think we've all learned a lot from the first wave, so we're not starting with no knowledge. Now we're starting with a lot of knowledge on how we do work together. And I think our local, states, and even national governments, along with healthcare systems, have really come together and are cooperating in extremely positive ways. I think the next wave, we won't see this. Full close down of society and closing down all other care like we did during the first wave. I think it will be a much more nuanced response.
Well, that's interesting, because I do wonder, if and when, or it sounds like when, we start to see an uptick in cases, I do wonder if the one thing we've learned is that kind of lockdown, or at least protecting those more vulnerable populations very quickly will make a difference.
Yes, I think so. And remember, the reason we locked down much of the healthcare system in the first wave was because we didn't have enough protective equipment for our caregivers. We're doing much better. The whole country's doing much better with that. So I think that won't be a barrier the next time quite so badly.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see obviously what that looks like and what the response is, especially now that I feel like we're both, from a medical and an economic perspective, much more sensitive to all of these elements. All right, stick with us, Dr. Joanne Roberts, please, Chief Quality Officer at Providence St. Joseph Health. On the other side of this, we're going to come back and maybe talk a little vaccines, talk a little bit about how this opening up is really playing out, because it depends on where you are in many ways, Carol, and I wonder what she's saying.
One of the conversations we had yesterday, it's Manhattan versus the rest of the country.
Yeah.
in large ways. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The Fed says economic activity slowed across all regions of the U.S. in recent weeks as its latest Beige Book cataloged the economic devastation from the COVID-19 pandemic. It says the impact on leisure and hospitality was especially severe. Wall Street is taking the report in stride. Stocks are extending their gains, with the NASDAQ, which has been down all day, turning higher. The Dow is up 317, the S&P 500 up 22, the NASDAQ up 6. The road to global economic recovery could be a bumpy one, according to Goldman Sachs. The firm warns of risks if pockets of coronavirus infections reemerge and if governments start to pull back on stimulus programs. With oil prices remaining depressed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Chevron plans to eliminate up to 15% of its workforce. Chevron had more than 48,000 employees at the end of last year. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Bloomberg and...
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working-safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
This is a message from the RNLI and Her Majesty's Coast Guard. Beach lifeguards can't be everywhere this summer, so they can't always protect your family, but you can. So keep an eye on your loved ones. Avoid taking risks in the sea. Don't use inflatables. In an emergency, dial 999 for the Coast Guard. Get more advice at rnli.org/beach2020. Thank you.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Pulls over a man into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And For a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
Casting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
We're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Joanne Roberts over at Providence St. Joseph Health on the front lines very much of this virus. A lot to learn, and eager to get back to that conversation with her, Carol.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get back there to your top business stories and another update on the trading day. Here's once again Charlie Pellett.
Thank you very much, Carol Massar. Happy Wednesday once again to you both. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, they're all advancing right now. NASDAQ turning around green on the screen on this Fed Wednesday. Federal Reserve says the coronavirus deeply damaged the U.S. economy in recent weeks with, quote, steep job losses and business closures. In its Beige Book report, the central bank said, quote, economic activity declined in all districts, falling sharply in most, reflecting disruptions associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking of which, Boeing has unveiled the first and deepest of its planned job cuts, saying it will notify 6,700 employees in the U.S. this week that their positions will be eliminated. The Walt Disney Company planning to be more cautious than other theme park operators in reopening attractions, saying it will take extra time to build trust with customers. The company plans to begin admitting guests back to its parks in Florida in mid-July. Well, some of the other stories that we are following today, Anthony Fauci, the government's top infectious disease expert, says, quote, there is a good chance a vaccine may be deployable by November or December. Meanwhile, the focus remains on testing. Lauren Saar is an assistant professor of emergency medicine at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. She was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
It's always good when you start to see the positivity rate in the testing that you're doing going down, which we are seeing. The WHO would like to see, roughly 5% positive of all the cases, of all the tests that you're being done, or less. Less is always better.
And we are seeing stocks higher across the board. As I mentioned, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Shares of some of the most beaten down companies are advancing today, among them cruise line stocks. We've got Carnival Cruise Lines up now by 5.2%, Royal Caribbean up by 7.5%, Norwegian Cruise Lines is pushing higher now, up by 6.5%. Nasdaq's up 9, up 0.1%, S&P up 22, up 0.8%, the Dow up 323, up by 1.3%, 10-year yield 0.67%, gold up 0.1%, 17.12 the ounce, and crude oil now dropping by 4.8%, down $1.63 a barrel, 32.70. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Well, let's continue our conversation with Dr. Joanne Roberts, Chief Quality Officer at Providence St. Joseph Health, joining us on the phone from Washington State. So, Dr. Roberts, we talked a little bit about remdesivir. That's obviously a therapeutic. We hear about antibody tests. We hear about vaccines. What's the thing we need to know at this point? What's the most important thing for our listening audience to understand about the medical side of this, and especially in light of sort of getting us back to some semblance of normal?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Jason. I think our next big challenge is continuing to make sure we have enough testing capacity. Still testing for evidence of acute infection. And as one of your other sources that you just featured said, looking to have enough tests to show that our communities have things under relative control when our tests show fewer than 5% of people testing positive. The more tests we have, we expect to see more negative results, which will be a good thing. We're still working with partial knowledge on just how sick our communities are. So that's step number one. Go ahead.
No. Please finish.
Step two, I think, is the therapies that are emerging, and that they will continue to emerge through the summer. And I think step three then is vaccines that Dr. Fauci mentioned today. And we would all hope for vaccines to be available by the end of this year. I think we don't expect that, but, hope is a good thing.
Yeah, I'll take hope. That's for sure. Hey, what's interesting, though, Dr. Roberts, is we talk so much about testing. Everybody does. Testing, tracing, right? This is key to it. I'm a little confused. Like, what do you tell society? Should Jason and I be tested? Should everybody be tested so that we have a really clear picture about who's had it, who hasn't had it? Because I think there's some concerns that as you do more testing, right, you do hope that there's more negatives, but that there's maybe also indications that more people have had it. So tell us a little bit more about kind of what we as society, what's our responsibility in improving the testing that needs to be done to get a better control of this pandemic.
Thanks for asking. That's a great question, Carol. And maybe if I could divide this into three ways of testing. So we have three strategies of testing going forward. Number one is individuals being acutely infected, and that's what we've been doing so far, and we're still doing that. So I have a fever, I go down to the testing center and I get tested. So if I have symptoms, I get tested. That's where we are today. As tests become more common, we'll take a more public health view. And so public health departments will start testing people without symptoms, but who might be at some risk, either by where they live, some exposure, to try to get a better idea of what the community infection rate is. The second stage is looking at the community. And then the third stage is that antibody stage. And that's looking at people who have had exposure and have mounted some sort of an immune reaction to COVID. And I think we're still a ways away from the second and third, although I think the second stage is where we're going to be moving in the next month or two.
And is that just a case of having enough tests, or is it just not the right time yet?
It is having enough tests. It is, as tests become more available, we can take a more public health viewpoint. The problem with the antibody test, as we've all heard, is that we have a lot of different tests out there checking for a lot of different kinds of antibodies, and we haven't figured out which are the antibodies that are correlated with immunity, which is really what we all want to know, right? Am I immune after I've had an episode of COVID?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's such a great point, and a great point to end on. Dr. Joanne Roberts, Chief Quality Officer of Providence St. Joseph Health, joining us on the phone from Washington State. That last point is so critical. I've been at a conversation with my sons today about this idea of like, oh, well, so-and-so has the antibodies. And one of them was like, all right, so what does that mean? Are we sure that means immunity? And the answer that I said was, I don't know. And by the way, that's exactly what Dr. Roberts just said, is we don't know what it means.
Didn't one of our reporters do a whole story about, right? That's what she did. It was antibody, wasn't it?
It was antibody.
Yeah.
What she found was that you got different results. I think what Dr. Roberts was
problematic too.
Also problematic. But what Dr. Roberts was saying is, even if you find out you have the antibodies, you're not even sure you're immune. So that's a really big leap that I think we're all taking in a very optimistic way, but we don't know. And that's why the vaccine ultimately is going to be the thing in many ways.
That was a great discussion.
Really good.
Appreciate that.
Really good. Check that out later if you missed any of it on our podcast. In the meantime, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got your World of National Headlines.
And thank you very much, Jason. Black leaders in Minneapolis are urging young protesters to stand down in their demonstrations today after last night's protest against the death during arrest of George Floyd turned violent. Spike Moss, co-founder of Freedom Now, said leaders have noted the swift response by police and city officials to condemn the actions of police.
For the first time in the history of black people in Minnesota, 4 white males were fired for doing wrong to our people. That's a long time when you deal with decades.
Elon Musk's SpaceX is angling to become the first U.S. company to join an elite club of government space powers with the know-how and wealth to blast humans into orbit. While that's uncharted territory, what comes next will be far more difficult. Musk is trying to turn such voyages into a sustainable business that supports a thriving space colony. The launch is set for today at 4:33 Florida time. The astronauts are already on the pad. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Bloomberg Business Week, Jason Kelly and Carol Masser. And Carol, I want to talk about Disney. Can we talk about Disney World for a second?
We can talk about Disney.
So Bob Chapek made the rounds, including to Bloomberg Television today, giving an interview to Emily Chang. And
David Weston, too. The two of them talked to him. Yeah.
Baby steps.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
You're living in a world built on...
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to...
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids. Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Kevin Clark.
If Josh Allen became the 10th best quarterback in football this year, they'd probably win 14 games. Am I wrong about that?
No. If you as a quarterback can't win in the Bills' situation right now, they should not extend you. So many teams, Jets, do not have the information they need to evaluate their quarterbacks based on the teams they built around them. The Bills do.
Listen and subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Search the Mina Kimes Show to listen.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis straight from the WWE to Steve Austin's no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
It's that scoreboard again. Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter To Cotton, to Fiala. He scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's Classic Game Replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown!
Search Classic Game Replays to listen for free.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. NASDAQ just turning lower once again, now down by 4 points. The Dow, the S&P, they are both higher. Stocks are advancing. Chip makers have erased losses after Micron Technology forecast earnings ahead of estimates, adding to optimism. The pandemic's damage to the economy has peaked. S&P 500 index up now by 18. That's a gain of 0.6%. The Dow holding on to a 286-point gain, up 1.1%. And again, NASDAQ lower now by 4, down less than 0.1%. 10 years up 5/32 with a yield of 0.68%. Gold up 0.2%. 17.13 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude now down 5.2%. WTI 32.56 a barrel. Recapping, S&P up 18, up 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Wednesday, and Josh Green writes that courting black voters was never going to be an easy task for President Trump, but exit polls did show that the president carried only 8% of them back in the 2016 presidential election. Even so, the Trump campaign not giving up when it comes to African-American voters. So let's get into it with Josh Green. He is national correspondent at Bloomberg Business Week. He's on the phone in Washington, D.C. Also with us is Joel Weber, Bloomberg Business Week editor, on the phone in Brooklyn, New York. I love stories like this, Joel, because it does remind us, we got an election, folks, just around the corner.
It's pretty remarkable because all we ever talk about is COVID, but right. We really do. And, one of the interesting developments in the weeks leading up to really the outbreak of the pandemic was that President Trump's reelection campaign made clear with great fanfare that they were going to go after black voters, which is not something that any political expert would expect because Trump had lost them overwhelmingly in 2016 and is probably going to do so again in 2020. But what was interesting was they thought they had a pretty compelling pitch, and it was based around the fact that as recently as February, black unemployment had been at historically low levels. That seemed like the basis for Trump to make an appeal to black voters. And the news that I break in this piece is that Trump had planned to open up black voices for Trump community centers and malls and retail outlets in battleground states. But now, because of the pandemic, that plan has been shelved.
And so, Josh, it's interesting that this story comes out, just days after what I think we can all agree was a pretty massive gaffe by Joe Biden on Charlemagne the God's show last week, where it's clear that he just takes that population for granted and that electorate for granted. Synthesize that for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. On the one hand, Biden is very popular with black voters. On the other hand, a complaint among many black voters, and one that the Trump campaign has pushed and stoked and exacerbated, is the contention that Democratic politicians take the black vote for granted and that black voters ought to therefore be more open to appeals from Republicans. And of course, Biden's gaffe where he said, you know, if you're black and you're thinking about voting for Trump, you ain't really black, or whatever he said, caused this whole kind of conflagration in the news cycle, and was, you saw President Trump, pushing on that, exacerbating that. And that's something that Democratic pollsters worry about, because Trump doesn't have to win the black vote in November in order to get reelected. If he can move the margins, 4, 5, 6% among black voters, that could be very costly in a tipping point state like a Wisconsin or a Michigan or a Pennsylvania. So that's something that Biden's going to have to worry about. And that's why the Trump campaign decided to target these voters.
All right, we do want to bring Joel Weber, Bloomberg Businessweek editor, into our conversation. He's on the phone in Brooklyn, New York. Joel, we went to you initially. I know we had some technical problems. We've got you now. I had kicked it off, and Josh jumped in on the conversation.
It's okay. Josh is the main event. It's totally. Josh is the main event. It's all good. I know where I stand.
No, you're up there. But it's a great reminder that, we do have this election year going on, so I love this coverage.
It's it was the story of the year, and it suddenly became like the second or maybe the third biggest story of the year. But yeah, I mean, I think what Josh pointed out here was something that was really important, which was going into what was going to be, a re-election campaign, like a traditional one. Trump had really identified that he had a potential way of targeting a black vote in a way that was really going to resonate with that community, which was all about unemployment. But Josh, the thing that I think really jumps out is the number has popped to 17%, I think you say in the story, could even go higher than that. How much of that could just totally walk away from him if the unemployment numbers for the black community just keep going higher?
Well, it's, in talking to economists, the actual number is almost certainly much higher, because black unemployment is usually higher than other unemployment. Could go as high as 25 or even 30%. So, certainly you wouldn't expect that to cause a rush of black voters to support Trump, and it removes really the main basis of his appeal to black voters. But what's interesting, if you talk to Trump strategists and also Democratic pollsters who specialize in reaching African Americans, which I did for this piece, Trump is really only targeting a fairly narrow segment of male African American voters who tend to be more positive toward him, in a specific subset that doesn't really pay attention to the news. They don't read newspapers. They don't watch broadcast news. They're what's known as low information voters, and they generally think of Trump as a pretty cool guy, a celebrity. They're open to an appeal. And these voters, by and large, don't feel particularly warmly toward the Democratic Party. One worry that Democrats have, ironically enough, is that if the economy is this bad, it's so bad, we're in a recession, and Trump is the only candidate talking about jobs, that might in fact be appealing to young African-American men who have found themselves out of a job as a result of the pandemic. So the big message among Democratic strategists I talk to who specialize in reaching black voters is that Democrats can't take this group for granted, because as crazy as it may seem to some people that blacks would support Trump in light of all that has happened with the coronavirus pandemic and the recession and so on, he only needs to reach a few of them to theoretically tip some of these battleground states that could wind up being decisive.
What about for Biden? I mean, this is an important part of, the voters that he hopes to capture.
Absolutely. The reason Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, in a nutshell, is because she didn't energize black voters to the same extent that Barack Obama had done in 2012. And as we all know, black voters are really the demographic group that drove Biden to win the Democratic nomination. But the problem is you need them to come out in the fall, too. And so one of the things the Biden campaign is talking about is, how do we incentivize those voters to come out? Do we pick someone like an African-American woman to join him on the ticket, like a Kamala Harris or a Stacey Abrams? Are there different things we can do to kind of get them excited about coming out in November? And remember, it's entirely possible that it could be difficult to vote. It's already more difficult for blacks to vote than it is for other groups. But if we're in the middle of a pandemic, or if there's a backlash, or as we saw in recent primary elections, if states simply close voting outlets in predominantly black areas, it could be harder to attract those voters, which makes it even more important that Biden find a way to reach and energize these voters and get them to come out in November. But that's something very much on the minds of Biden's campaign strategists right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. It's a terrific story. Very insightful as always. Josh Green, national correspondent for Bloomberg Business Week, joining us from D.C. Joel Weber, he's, of course, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. He joined us from Brooklyn, Carol.
All right. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, Jason and myself, we're going to continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 1061 in Boston, though, Bay State Business is coming up next. Speaking of what's next on Business Week, we're going to check in on the day's economic news. Of course, we did get that Fed Beige book, so we'll have some deeper analysis on that. That is coming up in just a moment. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
News without analysis.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Neil. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be two champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be one team hold up the trophy.
10, race to the 5, touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Fed Wednesday. We've got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ not only advancing at or near the best level of the session. So just about 60 minutes to go ahead of the close with the S&P up 26 now. That's a gain of 0.9%. S&P at 3,018. The Dow is up 347 points, up 1.4%. NASDAQ higher by 33 points, up by 0.4%. 10-year yield 0.67%. Gold is up 0.2%, 17.13 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down now by 5.1%, 32.60 a barrel. Stocks rose. Chip makers erase losses after Micron Technology forecast earnings ahead of estimates, adding to optimism the pandemic's damage to the economy has peaked. Federal Reserve Bank of New York President John Williams says policymakers, quote, are thinking very hard about targeting specific yields on Treasury securities as a way of ensuring borrowing costs stay at rock-bottom levels beyond keeping the benchmark interest rate near zero. He made the remarks in an interview this morning with Bloomberg Radio and Television. The Beige Book is out. Let's get the details now from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The Beige Book is based on reports from the Fed's 12 district banks, and all 12 reported the pandemic inflicted significant damage and rising unemployment. Devastation is widespread, the outlook uncertain, and businesses by and large pessimistic. The Fed holds its next policy meeting in early June. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
For a second day, stocks most punished by the effects of the economy shutting, from Carnival to United Airlines, are performing best as investors anticipate a sharp uptick in spending on non-essential goods and services. Among some of the airline names today, United Airlines Holdings, UAL, shares up by 3.5%. American Airlines Group up 6.1%. Delta is up 1.75%. Southwest Airlines up by 2.74%. Again, recapping, equities are advancing, best level of the day with the S&P up now by 26 points, a gain right now of 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics now. We've got the team assembled. Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg. She joins us from New York City. Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. He's in the great state of New Jersey. Carl, I want to start with you. We heard from John Williams. We heard from the Beige Book. What's the key thing we need to know about the world of economics today?
Well, I think the key thing we need to know is really what the trajectory of growth is going to look like in the back half of the year. So we're getting closer to that late July first print on Q2 GDP, which is going to be absolutely abysmal, showing an economic contraction of probably 38 to 40% in the economy. But what really matters is how we'll look going out of that, if we're going to limp into recovery or if we will be able to reabsorb a lot of this economic spare capacity. I know Jim Bullard, St. Louis Fed president, earlier today said the economy might recover faster than expected. That's not really consistent with what my team is seeing in terms of this massive dislocation of labor, and we're maybe starting to see a turn in the tide in terms of jobless claims starting to improve to some degree. But we've still got a lot of labor dislocation. And just as consumers were driving the economy before the crisis hit, it's going to be consumers that drive us out of this deep, record deep downturn. And with unemployment as high as it seems to be drifting, that's going to be a very tough row to hoe.
Yeah, exactly. Kathleen Hayes, what jumped out at you with those, the Fed Beige Book? I mean, it's great to get an idea of, even if it's anecdotes, of what's going on and what those regional Fed banks are hearing in terms of what's going on in the economy. And you do wonder, if this is some of the latest and greatest information that we can kind of work off of.
Well, certainly it's granular. It's more kind of micro in that they talk to businesses, they talk to academics, they talk to all kinds of people and assemble this. When I look at the summary, and I would recommend anybody who wants to get a quick idea of what the Fed's saying, it is just, now granted, it's not a look ahead. They take this Beige Book survey of the 12 district bank regions, of 3 or 4 weeks ahead of a Fed meeting. We have a Fed meeting on June 10th. Nevertheless, economic activity, this is a summary, declined in all districts, falling sharply in most, reflecting disruptions from the pandemic. Consumer spending fell further because retail establishments had to stay closed. That's my way of saying it. Auto sales lower. Employment continued to decrease in all districts. As for prices, pricing pressures varied, but we're steady to down modestly on balance. I'm surprised in some ways that they're not down more. So clearly this is telling us what we already know, but that it's still a bad outlook. And yes, jobless claims aren't falling as much, but the forecast is for 2.1 million in the latest week. And the question is, even when they level off, they will, we can assume, right? How quickly do they come back? Are the stimulus plans, is there going to be enough of a rebound? I mean, I agree, or I've said this myself. I just don't think that you can gauge consumer demand and say it's so weak and it's not going to rebound when people can't go in stores. When we can all go in stores and I can be the first in line at Marshall's, then I will be. I think then we'll get a better sense. But I'd say right now the data. But quickly, may I say we should talk about this. John Williams, president of the New York Fed, number 3 at the Fed, says, yes, he's looking at yield curve control. Right. He's talking about an economy rebounding, but yield curve control. But think about it, RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, has gone to a form of yield curve control where they're controlling their 3-year bond yield. We know Japan's been doing it. It's something I'd be kind of surprised if the Fed needs to do it once things pick up, because I find it hard to believe long-term yields are going to rise. But maybe that's what they're kind of signaling. If long-term yields start jumping and we think that's a threat to the economy, maybe that's when they're going to go beyond just QE and say we really are going to announce a level where we want, say, the 10-year note or some kind of yield to stay.
And so, staying with that, Carl Riccadonna, hearing something like that from John Williams, is that just a signal and more than a hint of what the next, weapon in the Fed arsenal is here?
I think that's a good point, Jason. We definitely know the Fed is leaning towards doing more based on what we've read from the minutes of the last meeting, what we've heard in recent comments. And doing more certainly does not mean negative rates. The Fed has made that abundantly clear. And just to put that further to bed, they're trying to show their hand of what the next tool will start to look like. And so yield curve control, something the Fed employed during World War II to finance those very high budget deficits, seems to be the next likely thing. This is basically an expansion of quantitative easing, but it's just slightly different parameters to guide the purchases. And this certainly lays the ground as we're seeing deficit to GDP and debt to GDP ratios moving back to those highs that we saw during the World War II period. So this is really the Fed's way of helping the economy during a period where we're going to be looking at much more expansive fiscal policy, certainly far more than what we saw just in the second quarter of this year.
And Carl, the Fed has talked a lot about small businesses, and I do wonder that if there is extreme fallout on the other side, how problematic will that be for the U.S. economy? Jason and I constantly talk about, it's the backbone, it's important, but I do wonder how that will potentially be a drag on any kind of recovery.
Well, to say that it's the backbone really is even understating the scale of the importance here. If we look at just employment levels in the private sector and look at, let's say, small and medium-sized firms, that accounts for about 85% of the private sector workforce. So really, it's easy to ignore small business as we unveil macro policies, but it is absolutely critical to the health of the economic recovery. And I would say even more so, it's been small and medium-sized firms that have been hit during this lockdown of the economy in Q2. So we can say it's 85% of the labor force, but really in the dramatic economic swings we're seeing, it's an even elevated role compared to that 85%. So the Fed recognizes this problem. They also recognize the problem of something big like the Fed getting funds to mom and pop businesses. Nonetheless, they're trying to do something in that regard, and that's going to be very critical as we start thinking about what the recovery looks like in the back half of this year.
May I say quickly, too, that, when it comes to recovery, reopenings are very important. I don't know if you guys saw something that went viral just in the last week or so on Twitter, where a woman in Brooklyn is sitting in her van and she's talking about her business that she and her husband built. They did everything they were asked to do to go along with the lockdown, but now why can't they reopen? When do they can? You can go to Target, you can go to Lowe's, you can go to all kinds of places, and I think this is where authorities more at the local level have to figure it out and move quickly.
Gotta go. All right, Kathleen Hayes, thank you so much. Carl Riccadonna. Let's get back to World and National News headlines. Back on over to Bob Moon.
Carol, thunderstorms have been a concern today at NASA's Kennedy Space Center and along the Dragon crew capsule's path to orbit. Comms checks underway this afternoon.
Launch control, Dragon, loud and clear. Launch control, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer. Dragon,
SpaceX
chief engineer on countdown 1, comm check.
SpaceX will have a small window to launch the Falcon rocket at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time, using the same pad where men flew to the moon and the last space shuttle soared in 2011. It is on the cusp of launching NASA astronauts into orbit, a first for a private company and a giant leap forward for the booming business of space travel. The House of Representatives delayed consideration of a bill to extend surveillance warrants in national security cases in light of President Trump's veto threat to take up a measure that was bipartisan, that is, censure of China for human rights violations. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman explains.
Democrat Brad Sherman denounced the mistreatment of China's Uyghur minority.
The goal of this inhumane campaign is clear: to erase all evidence of their unique language, culture, history, and religion. It is horrific.
Republican Michael McCall.
These ethnic minorities have been rounded up and forced into concentration camps where they are brainwashed with state propaganda. They live under a complete Orwellian surveillance program.
The suppression of Hong Kong gave additional impetus, as did China's initial denial of coronavirus. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
And I'm Bob Moon.
The tragedy of coronavirus continues. An entire continent is rocked to its core.
This is a wave that's crashed around the world.
Where is the information that's both local and global?
Do you expect loan losses to rise at European banks?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Do you see any signs of stabilization in the global economy?
Accurate everywhere. Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the... wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
You know, I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn. Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis straight from the WWE to Steve Austin's no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen. Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
This is Darren Waller. Good to have you.
Yes, sir. It's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen. The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you, I beg you to come down here right now.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind. Giving up, I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier to me. For me, Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. It is an update for the U.S. stock market. 43 minutes to go ahead of the close. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. And here is Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks in the green with an aggressive bounce off the morning lows. The Dow's up currently 360 points. At one point was only up 15. S&Ps are higher by 28. NASDAQ climbs by 32. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.68%. WTI crude futures down 5%. Gold is up 3, and transports gained 200 points. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Goldman Sachs, American Express, and J.P. Morgan, while Walmart, Pfizer, and Visa led to the downside. After earnings, Ralph Lauren was little changed. And in other news, the American Airlines CEO said, "We believe the worst is behind us," while Micron surged intraday after seeing Q3 adjusted EPS 75 to 80 cents. Wrapping things up, a busy night for tech earnings with Workday, Autodesk, HP Inc., and NetApp all reporting after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill Maloney. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg-type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, it's time for Bloomberg Green, and that's brought to you by PGIM. Outlast today's uncertainty with the long-term perspective of PGIM, the investment management business of Prudential. Find out more at pgim.com. Carol?
Yeah, so Jason, doing more with less electricity is one of the best ways to decarbonize the economy, but the future for energy efficiency, well, it's hit a pandemic-sized speed bump. It's our Bloomberg Green segment today, and let's talk about that speed bump, what we're talking about. Joining us is Emily Chasen. She's sustainability editor at Bloomberg News. She joins us once again on the phone in New York City. Emily, good to have you here again. So talk to us about what's going on and how the virus is impacting electricity.
Yeah, thanks, Jason and Carol. Yeah, it's a really interesting time for energy efficiency. So before this pandemic hit, it was going to be like the biggest boom year energy efficiency had ever seen. Everybody wanted to spend on the climate. You can actually make back your money in 1 or 2 years if you do things like change out light bulbs or change out heat compressors and just make your buildings more green and just use less energy. It saves you money very quickly. So people were going to spend a lot. Then the pandemic hit, and electric usage has gone way down, so people are not there's not as much electricity to save from energy efficiency. They're not spending as much. And then also they just put out these job numbers in clean energy, and the biggest hit sector in clean energy seems to be energy efficiency, that people are just not quite doing this the way they had planned.
Yeah, so how much of this feels like, Carol said a pandemic-sized speed bump.
Those were Emily's words. They were just great ones.
And how much of it is a speed bump, and how much of it is temporary? I guess how much of it is in less in less flowery terms, just a blip?
So buildings are about 40% of power usage in some places. So in New York City, buildings are a huge amount of power usage. And the big way to get New York State to its energy goals is to change out all the electric usage in buildings, right? And all the commercial stuff. So that's really what they need to do to get those goals. And those goals are still out there for 2025, 2030. So there's still a lot of pressure to get these done quickly because the goals are so big. So I think companies still might do them. A lot of people are going to go in and install touchless faucets and look at their HVAC systems just for the pandemic and bringing people back to work. So they'll probably look from an energy efficiency perspective as well.
So what do we need to kind of get everybody back on track? Because it is a new environment, right? And we need to kind of rethink things a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because there's some stocks that have, there's lots of different companies in this space. We looked at Cree Inc. or FLIR Systems this week, and, the way that energy efficiency has happened before is through these energy audits. So companies like FLIR have done that, where they send an auditor and they say, oh, here's all the places you're losing money that you don't need to be, but now you can change that. And make some money and save some money. But that doesn't really work in a social distancing era in the same way. So people aren't going to have those energy auditors come into your home or your building and really investigate everything. So that's a big speed bump, and that would probably have to be fixed or find some new ways to do it. You could put smart meters in homes. You could do, the light bulb changes. There's some quick hits like that. So we saw that Cree Inc. was upgraded by JP Morgan this week because it does stuff like that people think this will just be a speed bump for them, and they'll really see a big benefit.
But I do think about buildings and how they're going to be, re-equipped in a post-COVID-19 environment, and whether you have more electricity that's going to be needed because you're going to need things to be remotely opened, whether it's elevators, whether it's, entries, whether it's, bathroom door. I just don't know. And I do wonder if there will be more pressure because ultimately we will see increased energy usage, and people need to kind of think about that. I don't know if that plays into any of your thinking or what you're hearing.
Yeah, there's a big push to just think about this in the stimulus plan and to have incentives around it so that companies aren't wasting carbon, I guess, as they come back to work. So the Rocky Mountain Institute this month, they put out a stimulus plan idea, and they said you could launch a national building retrofit program and scale up green mortgages and offer incentives for electrifying buildings and disconnecting gas. And that's actually a good way to put people back to work, too, because we already had sort of a shortage of workers available for energy efficiency before this happened.
Yeah. Well, it's a really interesting twist on something we've been talking a lot about, which is getting back to work and how you think about office buildings. And candidly, it's not an element that I had thought of. Emily Jason, thank you so much. She wrote this story and gets full credit for that nice line, the pandemic-sized speed bump, Carol.
Totally. It was so well written, I thought, I'm just going to borrow it.
Just
for the introduction.
Just lift it right out of there.
I don't know if in your household, like we went through a whole wave where like all the light bulbs, my husband was just going like, slowly like changing over to the more efficient light bulbs.
But can I make a confession?
Yes.
Sometimes the light's not great.
I know. I complain.
And I care a lot about how I'm lit, as you know.
I need that warm, like, lighting.
That warm, I need all the help I can get with the shiny head and all these different things.
I said the same thing at home. I'm like, honey, I really don't like this light. He's like, they're more energy efficient. I'm like, I know, but I really hate the light.
I know, but I need to look pretty.
Yeah, well, I'm at home.
At all times.
Oh, my God. They are getting better, though. They're learning how to do warm, energy-efficient lights.
Warm, energy-efficient. All right. Well,
all right.
Let's do it. I'm going to be in the market for those. I'll pay any price to look just a little bit better. Vanity. Oh, vanity. All right. Coming up, we're going to have Dave Wilson's chart of the day. Always look forward to because it comes along with the song of the day. And we always look forward to catching up with Dave Wilson.
All right, check out all things green. Go to Bloomberg.com/green. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are higher in the final hour on rising optimism that economic damage from the pandemic has peaked. The Dow is up 359, the S&P 500 up 27, the Nasdaq up 33. Pink slips are going out at Boeing as it unveils the first of its planned job cuts. It's notifying nearly 6,800 employees that their jobs are being eliminated. Boeing warned last month that it would need to cut employment by 10%. Disney is taking it slow as it reopens its Florida theme parks. It plans to begin admitting guests in mid-July, weeks after Universal Studios and SeaWorld. Disney CEO Bob Chapek says he wants more time to build trust with customers. In a day-one boost to its new streaming service, AT&T has struck a deal with Comcast to distribute HBO Max. Comcast customers who already pay for HBO or HBO Now can get HBO Max at no extra cost. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
It's a stock market driver.
Now they're starting to see a little bit of panic from policymakers.
It's a global political force.
How will this epidemic reshape big tech and its relationship with Washington?
It's a virus.
This coronavirus is a global pandemic.
Is there a safe haven?
And the facts matter.
The situation is so bad because of the virus that is simply unavoidable.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Are you interested in a challenging...
TSB believe in people helping people. That's why they've created TSB Smart Agent, a new secure way for TSB to answer your personal and business banking questions online. Find out more at tsb.co.uk. Automated service available 24/7. TSB partners available 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday to Friday.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events to standout stations and podcasts, stay in touch with TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is, we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the StatCast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In there. So we had to out the Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards, that's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen. Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York.
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, the chart of the day. I love it so much.
You're a little wacky today.
I am a little wacky.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the chart of the day as well. And, of course, checking in with our Dave Wilson in just a moment, who will probably be a little less wacky than Jason Kelly.
I don't know. Every once in a while, Dave gets a little wacky.
Yeah, his ties definitely get wacky. Kind of miss seeing those, don't you?
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Charlie Pellet. He's waiting patiently, and he's got an update on the trading day. Hey,
I'm waiting for the song of the day. That's up to in just a moment. Here's what's going on. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They're all moving higher right now. We've got just about 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell, and we have got the S&P 500 index up 27 right now. That is a gain of 0.9%. The Dow up 377 points, up by 1.5%. NASDAQ up 27, up by 0.3%. General optimism permeating the market today, even against the backdrop of tensions, rising tensions with China. 10-year up 7/32. The yield there 0.67%. Gold up 0.2%, 17.13 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down now by 4.6%, 32.77 a barrel. Among some of the oil names today, we're seeing ExxonMobil down 0.1%. BP is up by 3%. Shares of EOG Resources are up by 1.4%. And Pioneer Natural Resources, the ticker on that, PXD, it is down now by just about 0.4%. Chevron announcing those job cuts today. Chevron shares up by 0.2%. 3:33 on Wall Street. Time now for the Small Business Report. And here's John Tucker.
Clayton Bouchon owns the Cantina Lobos Mexican restaurant in Pelham, New York. We spoke with him 2 months ago. In the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak, his business was Clayton joins us again now. Tell us how the restaurant's surviving in a world of stay-at-home orders, takeout only.
We survived well. We're lucky that we're in a small town that's managed. That's super supportive. We really concentrated on pivoting to takeout, and now we're actually starting to rethink about how we're going to strategize the restaurant, how we're going to make everybody feel safe, and how we're going to continue to offer the takeout biz because we think it's going to be strong. To the summer, just because a lot of people don't want to go out.
Can you guess when the revenue will be back to pre-pandemic levels?
My gut tells me that the revenues were, close to pre-pandemic levels towards the end. That there's definitely been a tiring of it all. Probably right around Cinco de Mayo, which was a boom for us, obviously. And then it hasn't tailed off. It's been solid to keep my staff and to keep the hours up, but it's kind of tailed off. I think obviously people are getting a little tired of everything. I'm a little concerned about pivoting. Back to the restaurant because they're only going to let us have, I don't know, they haven't announced exactly the amount, but we've heard anywhere from 25 to 50% of capacity. And who's going to want to come to the restaurant inside will continue. So, I feel positive about the future, but we're optimistically pessimistic about it.
Clayton Bouchon, the owner of Cantina Lobos Mexican Restaurant in Pelham, New York. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Small Business Report.
And we thank you very much, John Tucker. Recapping equities higher here. 25 minutes to go. S&P up 25, up by 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. I got to tell you, straight up, the artist that I miss the most,
Tom Petty. Yeah, I know. You've talked about that.
I love Tom Petty so much. I still listen to a ton of his music, and a tribute to his family and folks who sort of keep his social media going. And he's got a great satellite music channel. Like, his music, I think, will endure in a way that almost nothing has. It's sort of in our generation in many ways. Yeah. So, anyway, what a loss. Anyway, Dave Wilson, there's been a change.
Indeed, there has. A change of heart when it comes to stocks. I mean, we've certainly seen that in the last couple of months when you consider the S&P 500 index is back around 3,000, far cry from where it was in the middle of March. And you've seen sort of a similar move happening in option markets, and that's where Jonathan Krinsky was looking. He's the chief market technician at Baycrest Partners, trying to get a sense of whether things have kind of gone too far in terms of moving away from the fear that investors had a couple of months ago.
California has done pretty well. Well, we locked down early, and things seem to be improving. So far, so good.
How do you think the economic outlook is doing? I know last time you were on with us, it's a little bit more than a month ago, you talked about how the Fed has created socialist markets. Many would certainly point to the Fed for keeping things calm in the financial markets and the economy amid the pandemic. Has your thinking at all changed about this?
Well, no, I think it's pretty much the same in the sense that the money supply is up 14% year over year, and the money has got to go to work. And I think the Fed drew a line in the sand on, I think it was April the 8th, when they came in and said that they would support credits that needed to survive. The double Bs that had fallen to, or triple Bs that had fallen to double Bs, crossover credits, and they were buying ETFs, high yield ETFs. So I think the Fed put is alive and well. I don't know if you call that socialism, but I think that, a lot of support for the market.
And so has monetary policy really been the key weapon here? Because I believe last time you were with us too, we talked about sort of the balance between monetary and fiscal. It feels like fiscal has fizzled a little bit. At least the debates on Capitol Hill have delayed anything going on. That's become very much a political football, and yet the Fed seems to soldier on. And we even heard from New York Fed President John Williams earlier today here on Bloomberg, talking about managing the yield curve a little bit. So feels like this is sort of the Fed's game still.
Well, I think it's rotated to the Fed's game. I think early on the fiscal measures helped a substantial amount. I think the question to your point about the MMT, the targeting of rates, is what can the Fed do next? And I think that's the big question.
And what do you think? What should they do?
Well, I think the Fed should, hold service right here and see how this plays out. Look, I have a big smile on my face. The markets are doing very well today. You got the big stimulus package in Europe, but I think you have to see how the trade tensions play out. I am concerned about ratcheting up tensions with China, and I think that the markets you can argue are very fully valued here, and where do we go from here?
How do you think about Hong Kong? I just want to follow that on that for real briefly, Kirk, because we talk about it from a fairly almost parochial perspective. We spend so much time talking to folks on Wall Street. We know about sort of the presence that big global financial firms have in Hong Kong. We know it's a gateway to Asia. We understand the political value there, but I wonder from the perspective of someone who has to look after the markets globally and, as Carol pointed out at the beginning, across so many asset classes, and how do you factor the Hong Kong tension specifically into your investment case?
Well, I worry about supply chains and I worry about pricing. We've all benefited from cheap goods coming out of China, and that has kept inflation low and arguably, led Americans to have a much better life with cheaper products. You wonder, with all the barriers coming up, whether you really are going to get the optimal economy that we all want, not only domestically and internationally, with increased tensions with China. And, don't forget that our economies are very, very linked. And China also owns $1 trillion of our treasury. So, there are 25, 30 years of working together for the global good. And if we're going to have new rules, there's obviously an uncertainty quotient there.
Well, there is definitely, and there's certainly heightened tensions not only between the U.S. and China, but it looks like between China and India. I mean, there's a lot of things that it feels like are brewing at this point. I mean, what kind of visibility, Kirk, do you feel like you have on the remainder of the year?
Well, I think this year is playing out pretty much as I thought it would, in the sense that I thought we'd be back to these levels at the end of the year. So clearly the market is, anticipating that the growth of the virus has peaked or will peak, and that the global economy will recover. And that may well be the case. But I think it's hard here to go much further than we've gone, short of seeing more data. And I think the big question here is the second wave with a big question mark. Is there going to be a second wave in the fall, and how bad is it going to be? But so far, so good.
And your clients seem pretty optimistic given all the green they're seeing on their screens?
Well, I've been, honestly amazed at our clients, and they stuck with their asset allocations, meaning I think most people had the view that they were not going to change most of what they had, and most people didn't, and I think that they've benefited from that. So I give them credit. I think the things you got to ask now are, what is the future of interest rates? What's the future of fixed income? You have a 10-year treasury at 60 basis points, massive amount of debt, and you clearly are going to have a lot of global dislocation. So things are good, but there are obviously some worries on the horizon.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, we really appreciate your time. As always, Kirk Hartman, he is the President, Global Chief Investment Officer for Wells Fargo Asset Management, joining us on the phone from Los Angeles. Carol, coming up, we are going to talk about the close of trading. We're going to talk with Ashley Vance because, and we've heard about this a little bit. I keep seeing headlines go across. I'm excited about it. I totally agree with you. And I know that you've got sort of a family connection to the space program. I mean, we haven't had one of these in a long time. And I remember as a kid, and I'm sure you do too. I mean, this is a big deal. It's a big deal going into space. Like, manned spaceflight? It's been 9 years.
Exactly. And this is a big move for private spaceflight. Yeah. The weather is still, though, a little bit sketchy, so we'll see if this ultimately goes off. But we're going to be counting down and taking a look at it. Stick around. This is Bloomberg.
With a new day comes new...
The Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Kevin Clark.
If Josh Allen became the 10th best quarterback in football this year, they'd probably win 14 games. Am I wrong about that?
No. If you as a quarterback can't win in the Bills' situation right now, they should not extend you. So many teams, Jets, do not have the information they need to evaluate their quarterbacks based on the teams they built around. The Bills do.
Listen and subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Search the Mina Kimes Show to listen.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting 9 podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number 1. Not only
on TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Level of the day, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all advancing, surging into the close. Mandy Harvey from America's Got Talent and Rod Martin from Voya Financial virtually ringing that closing bell as they thank frontline workers across the country. And this headline to pass along first before we check the numbers, U.S. virus cases up 1.2%. That number below the past week's average of 1.4%. So it was an update today for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ stocks gaining for a third day on rising optimism. The pandemic's damage to the economy has peaked. 2-year treasuries fell. Longer-dated bonds rose. S&P 500 index is now at an 11-week high. So here's where we stand with the S&P up 44 points, now at 3,036, up by 1.5%. NASDAQ up 72, up by 0.8%. The Dow rallied 553 points, up 2.2%. 10-year up seconds with a yield of 0.68%. Gold up 0.2%, 17.13 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 4.2%, 32.90 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. As for the market backdrop, Kirk Hartman is Global Chief Investment Officer at Wells Fargo Asset Management. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Look, I have a big smile on my face. The markets are doing very well today. You got the big stimulus package in Europe, but I think you have to see how the trade tensions play out. I am concerned about ratcheting up tensions with China, and I think that the markets you can argue are very fully valued here. And where do we go from here?
Cruise line names beating down stocks. Some of the gainers today. Carnival up 5.9%. Royal Caribbean up 9.5%. Norwegian up 9.7%. SeaWorld up by 6.8%. Disney announces reopening plans for its parks in Florida up 0.5%. Recapping S&P up 44, up 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing. Think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Oh, come on, shake him, not stir.
Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everyone, time to take a look at some of the stocks on the move. We are, of course, waiting for earnings from HPQ. As soon as they cross, we'll bring them to you. Let's do big picture. Charlie breaking down those equity averages, and we finished at our highs of the session, so we really saw some buying into the close and certainly in the last hour of trading. So what does it all mean? I mentioned earlier all of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500 higher today. Your outperformers, financials up more than 4%, industrials up 3.4%, real estate up 2%, consumer staples up 1.5%, consumer discretionary up about 1.3%, but everything across the board was higher. S&P 500, no surprise. Most names in the index higher today, 431 to be exact, 74 though losing some ground, Jason. So yeah, definitely, despite some uncertainty, I feel like at the beginning, because we did see some selling right after the open, we definitely saw some buying and momentum picking up throughout the day here.
Yeah, it's an interesting chart to look at throughout the day. You're right. Yeah. Because when I checked in earlier in the day, just looking at my Bloomberg, it's like, people don't seem too excited about this, even after futures had been up through the night, really, and then into the morning. And, as you say, some economic indicators as they went along. I think Dr. Fauci probably didn't hurt either in terms of injecting some optimism about a vaccine. And we should point out the chip sector. And Charlie mentioned this, and Dave Wilson mentioned it earlier in the day. Micron, almost said Microsoft, Micron, MU, coming out with some better than expected revenue forecasts, and that stock was up 8%. And let me just take a look at the SOX. That's the Philly Semiconductor Index. That was up as well. That was up almost 1.5 percentage points. And retail, that was another big series of gainers, including Nordstrom.
Yeah, a bunch of names in the retail sector, certainly getting a kick to the upside. They are your number 1, 2, 3 best gainers and biggest gainers in the S&P 500.
And interesting mix, too, right?
Yeah.
So Gap, Nordstrom, and Kohl's.
Gap was up 18%.
Yeah.
Nordstrom was up almost 17%, and Kohl's was up 14%.
But where's Gap for the year? That's the gut check I think we need.
What do you got there?
GPS, right?
Gap is down 40% for the year. Yeah. Not pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still not having a great time of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it looked like U.S. same-store sales, was it overall down 5.5% year over year for the week? That was Redbook numbers coming out. So May sales expected to be down 6.8% over the same month of the previous year. So
can we talk a little bit about HP? We're going to get into it in just a minute, but the red head crossing right now, HP Inc., that's HPQ, we should point out is the ticker. Second quarter net revenue coming in, oh my gosh, it just
$12.47 billion.
Thank you.
So it's a little light. $12.86 billion was what the Wall Street community was looking for. Not providing a fiscal year outlook on uncertainty, right? We've heard that from a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Second quarter adjusted EPS, that did come in better than forecast. 51 cents a share, so that's 9 cents better than what Wall Street was forecasting. Sees third quarter adjusted EPS 39 to 45 cents. A little bit of a range, and they're certainly reining that in. The estimate that's out there is 46 cents a share. So definitely
down.
Yeah, it is down, right, in the after hours?
Yeah, about 3.5%. So we're going to catch up with Anand Srinivasan in just a few minutes, and he's really good about reminding us candidly why we care about HPQ, why we care about HPQ versus HPE, and sort of that whole space.
New.
And really it comes down, I think, to what companies are buying at the end of the day. Right?
And I just want to quickly mention Twitter. That stock was under pressure today, down about 2.8%. That after the company adding a fact check label to President Trump and his tweets for the first time. So there is definitely a SPAC going on. We're going to talk about that with our Sarah Fryer in just a moment.
Yeah, that is really something. That's been a story that's been developing throughout the day.
Trending
and not surprisingly, on Twitter. There's been a lot of tweeting about Twitter and the president and sort of the president's tweets and then Twitter's response. And then the president responding to Twitter and going pretty big on the idea of, regulating or even saying shutting down social media. And it's quite a remarkable time in a series of events that all seem remarkable in many ways. Let's take a look at volatility. If we can, it was down a touch. The VIX down about 1.1%, closing at 27.69.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson, time for your stock of the day. You tweezed it earlier. Talk to us about RCUS.
Okay, Carol, it's Arcus Biosciences. The company's developing cancer therapies. We're talking treatments for breast, colorectal, kidney, lung, pancreatic, and prostate cancer. Arcus was founded in 2015 and went public in 2018. The ticker, as you mentioned, is RCUS. That's Arcus without the A. Its largest shareholder is Google's owner, Alphabet, which owns an 11% stake. Shares of Arcus fell as much as 58% from their initial price in the first 18 months of trading. They recouped the loss this year and then took off in April when people familiar with the matter said Gilead Sciences was in talks to buy a stake. The discussions led to speculation that Gilead might buy Arcus outright, and that prospect sent the shares soaring as much as 140% to a record. Instead, Arcus agreed to a partnership with Gilead, which will pay $175 million up front and invest $200 million for about a 13% stake. Now, terms of this 10-year deal allow Gilead to own no more than a 35% holding after 5 years. And in response to all this, Arcus shares suffered their biggest loss since mid-March. They dropped more than 19%.
Still up 167%, almost 168% this year. So they're doing, shareholders in the company are still doing okay.
All right,
how much
Dave
the
Wilson.
stock run up? and then the prospect of what this deal would look like.
Exactly,
sure.
Dave.
All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We will catch up with you tomorrow. For now, let's get back to Ed Baxter. He's got world and national headlines in San Francisco. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Carol. Trump administration says Hong Kong's autonomy is gone and can no longer certify its economic separation from Beijing. State Department Morgan Ortega's a spokeswoman with Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli says they have been watching for over a year now, and it is a series of events culminating in the proposed security legislation.
The United States, we have long-term investments in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong's, the regional stability depends on Hong Kong's autonomy. But we have to remember that it's these series of actions over the past year, since last March, that again have put Hong Kong's stability and prosperity in jeopardy.
But Bloomberg Sherry-On says it goes even beyond Hong Kong, depending on China's response.
With more and more American businesses really working in China, could they be impacted? Could working in China become even harder?
And this action today is just the latest object thrown into the weakening relations between China and the United States, with Hong Kong caught in the middle here. SpaceX Dragon making final preparations for its launch at the bottom of the hour, hopefully.
Launch control, Dragon, loud and clear. Launch control, loud and clear. Stand by for contract by the chief engineer.
Now, this is nearly 10 years in the making.
Two big things about today's launch, of course. The first time in 9 years that we've launched U.S. astronauts into orbit from American soil. Number two, on a commercial vehicle. This is the very first time we will launch astronauts into orbit on a commercial vehicle, and this is a huge deal.
As former NASA astronaut Gilroy Chow, it's headed to the space station testing human sustainability. Weather is a little bit iffy, but it's still green light for the bottom of the hour. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Why can't you just go to some remote island and wait till all this is over?
The range of outcomes is so wide.
Because it's your job.
What do you think some of the structural changes might result?
Fortunately, it's our job too.
How's the value done in this market?
Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
It's very hard to make a forecast.
Bloomberg Markets.
This could be a lower for longer type of hit.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
This Independence Day, it's a Boston Pops salute to our heroes, presented by Bloomberg and Eaton Vance. The Boston Pops 4th of July tradition continues with new music, paying tribute to the heroes of the current health crisis and honoring the memories of those we have lost. Plus, special guest artists and fireworks displays from years past. Watch and listen July 4th starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
COVID-19.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed, retrieve data fast. Scalability, grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity, easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike. Just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir. It's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen. The NHL is always on the ice with these awesome hockey podcasts on TuneIn. Get your goal with the Spittin' Chicklets podcast.
Brian Yandel, Keith Yandel, thanks for coming on. What's going on?
Nothing much. Glad to be here. You guys got some nice digs here.
We heard you took Southwest 2-stop flight to get out here.
Yeah, well, I just...
Carve up the ice with NHL at the rink.
The other day, I wrote a story. Artemi Panarin, Semyon Varlamov, Sergei Bobrovsky, they all helped arrange for the purchase of N95 masks to benefit hospitals in their respective markets. This is another one of those positive stories you're seeing.
Or create your own power play with Locked On NHL.
All these teams invested future assets to take a run at the Stanley Cup right now. Like, all of those teams would have a real serious gripe, like trading these multiple first-round picks to make a run at a cup. You're right.
Discover these and more NHL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Among the companies out with earnings after the closing bell, HP Inc. shares now down by 2.5%. It reported declining quarterly sales, signaling the coronavirus pandemic has disrupted the supply chain of the world's second largest PC maker. Revenue down 11% to $12.5 billion. Again, shares of HP Inc. lowered by about 2.5%. Stocks higher for a third day. Rising optimism the pandemic's damage to the economy has peaked. S&P 500 index is now at an 11-week high. S&P did advance today by 44 points to 3,036, up 1.5%. The Dow up 553 points, up 2.2%. NASDAQ up 72. That is a gain of 0.8%. 10 years up 4/32, yield 0.68%. Gold up 0.2%, 17.14 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 4.8%, $32.69 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. And we should bring you the headline that SpaceX launch appears to have been scrapped, Carol, based on the weather.
Yeah, exactly. There were some concerns about it as early as this morning, and they needed everything to be in place. It's not only for the launch. What's interesting is it can go off in rain, but you have to think about if there are complications that they're landing in the Atlantic, the capsule, it needs to be good conditions, safe conditions for those astronauts if they have to abort the mission. So they've got to think about the launch as well as a possible recovery effort. So that's why they've got to really play it safe. So something we'll look forward to. It will certainly happen in the future because it's a big deal. Not only for Elon Musk and SpaceX, but really for the U.S. space efforts. So looking forward to hearing more in the future.
All right, so let's talk about one of the names that we're keeping a close eye on. That is HP. HPQ reporting some declining revenue, supply chain disruptions. No big surprises, but let's help you understand what's driving the stock, which I believe continues to trade lower. Just checking to see where that is. Yeah, but it's holding that sort of down 3.6%. Anand Srinivasan is with us. He looks after all of this for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone. All right, Anand, what do we make of this?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. So the bottom line is that the printer business was a little weaker than most expectations, and the PC business is a little better than most expectations. So when you put the two together, I think that net-net it's a margin negative because the printing business has its operating margin and the PC business had sort of mid-single digits operating margin. So the prognosis for that is not very good when you have that kind of a mix.
So, first of all, I want to go back to the PC business. Didn't we all talk about for years, I feel like, that the PC business was a dying one?
Look, I think that we went through a 4-year period where PCs declined almost double digits 4 years in a row, and then the tablet was going to kill the PC, the smartphone was going to kill the PC, and then we suddenly figured that we couldn't do everything we needed to do on the smartphone and the tablet, and the PC has seen a revival, particularly in the corporate environment, right? And now COVID-19 enters, and the work from home scenario has sort of given some oomph to the PC business, which has seen some positive uplift as a result of corporates buying ahead of the Win 7D support, the Windows 7D support. Everybody's migrating to Windows 10. So there were a couple of things going positive for it. And then, we expect PCs to be still down this year, but, significantly biased towards negativity, significantly biased towards the calendar second half of the first half. But the golden goose here is certainly the printing business. And obviously that has multiple negatives going for it. We're not printing anymore as much, number one. Number two is we're not buying these big printers, one per floor, if you may. We're not buying as many of those. And the consumer printing environment, even if you say, okay, COVID's going to help the consumer printer, that's actually not a good business to be in. So when you put it all together, the printing business, which is you want it to be steady Eddie, you want it to be biased towards the high-end devices, all those things are not panning out. So as much as personal systems are doing a touch better, the printing business weakness, I think, will freak people out.
All right, you can set your watch by me asking you this question just about every quarter, Anand, which is, what does this tell us that's company specific, and what does it tell us about the broader market? Because we're all looking for signals. We looked at what we heard from Micron earlier today about sort of broader enthusiasm for semiconductors that help push that sector up. Does HBQ tell us a broad story, or is it too narrow to really do that?
And Anand, it's 4:22 on the East Coast, so no clocks are set.
Yes, that's right. No pressure. But listen, we had 4 data points today, right? So Nutanix is reported, NetApp is reported, HBQ is reported, and Micron gave us an update. Right? The semiconductor business is actually much better than people feared.
Yeah.
Because it has 3 constituents going for it. The consumer business, the corporate business, which is not doing so well, and the cloud business. The cloud business and the consumer business potentially short-lived impact, but the cloud business is giving it a huge boost, right? So depending on in these 3 constituencies, you're going to be positively or negatively impacted. HP obviously benefits from a little bit of the consumer and corporate buying oomph as a result of COVID-19. But printers are mostly in offices, right? So everything is shut down there, if you may. So that impact is a negative for them, and they don't benefit as much from the cloud environment. So, they've got possibly one half of 3 items going for it. Broadly speaking, semiconductors as a whole, I think we are positively surprised or relieved that the COVID impact hasn't been as substantial as our worst-case scenario. In fact, the June quarter might, in fact, be the trough, and the stocks certainly reflect. And depending on how quickly we recover in the second half, that will determine and grow into these valuations.
Right. Well, we should point out shares of HBQ, they're down about 3.5% here in the after hours. Stock is down a little bit more than 16, almost 17% so far for the year. Anand, thank you so much. We always are so delighted when we get a chance to check in with you about these earnings and those that you follow. Anand Srinivasan, he's Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Semiconductor and Hardware Analyst on the phone in New Jersey.
All right, coming up, we are going to talk about SpaceX. Launch not happening, but Ashley Vance is going. Yeah, I know. It's a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
We'll see when they reschedule that for. But in the meantime, Ashley Vance is going to tell us what it all means and what we can hopefully someday look forward to. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Economic optimism fueled a powerful rally on Wall Street, lifting the S&P 500 to an 11-week high. The Dow gained 553, the S&P climbed 44, the Nasdaq Composite surged 72. The Fed says the coronavirus deeply damaged the U.S. economy in recent weeks. Its latest Beige Book said the damage includes steep job losses and business closures, with the impact on leisure and hospitality especially severe. Tesla is cutting prices on its electric cars by up to $5,000 on its Model S and Model X, suggesting that the COVID-19 pandemic has put a damper on demand. The Model 3 was cut by $2,000. Not everyone feeling the financial pinch from the pandemic is losing a job. Some have seen their pay cut as their employers fight to survive. Companies, including the Container Store and Lyft, have ordered what they say are temporary salary cuts. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
It's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. On this day, in 1997, Major League Baseball begins revenue sharing between clubs.
The issue is competitive balance in, professional sports, but professional baseball in particular, where the issue there is really a growing amount of concern that the major market teams, the New York.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up at the Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Rolls over a man into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about Hong Kong, a little more, because it's an important story, and it's interesting, even when you look at the byline of the story on the Bloomberg, it's a State Department story and an emerging markets reporter. That is all you really need to know to understand who cares about this story, and it's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories and some of the headlines after the close. Here is, once again, Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, Carol Massar. We've got Autodesk shares trading unchanged right now. They did tumble after forecasting adjusted EPS for the full year at 352 to 390. Had seen it in a range of 421 to 444, but right now, shares of Autodesk, they are trading virtually flat after hours. HP Inc. reported declining quarterly sales, signaling the coronavirus pandemic has disrupted the supply chain of the world's second largest PC maker. Revenue was down 11%. Shares of HP Inc. out of Palo Alto, they are down now by 3.5%. Stocks higher for a third day on rising optimism. The pandemic's damage to the economy has peaked. S&P climbing to an 11-week high, holding above 3,000 points and its average price for the past 200 days. Investors are also keeping an eye on developments and tensions between the U.S. and China. Megan Green is a senior fellow at the Kennedy School.
I think relations between China and the U.S. are just set to get worse from here. I mean, I think that this entire crisis has clearly brought out narratives both from the U.S. and China that suggest that we're all going to back into our corners of protectionism.
And we will have more on rising tensions between the U.S. and China coming up for you in just a moment right here on a Bloomberg Business Week. For a second day, stocks most punished by the effects of the economy shutting, from Carnival to United Airlines, perform best as investors anticipate a sharp uptick in spending on non-essential goods and services. Today, we did see a lot of the airline shares moving higher today. Also, we had shares of cruise line companies advancing as well today. So it turned out to be an up day for the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ Composite Index. S&P up 44, up 1.5%. NASDAQ up 72, up by 0.8%. Dow Jones Industrial Average climbing today by 2.2%. So again, recapping, equities did advance today. S&P up 44, a gain of 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's get back into what's emerging as one of our top stories of the day, and that is the State Department's decision to take some pretty firm action as it relates to Hong Kong and China. Ben Bartenstein joins us. He is on our Emerging Markets Americas team. He's been watching this very closely because it does have significant implications for Wall Street, for the global financial markets, even beyond the politics of the day. So, Ben, help us understand what's going on here and the significance of this move by the State Department.
Thanks, Jason. As you mentioned, the Trump administration obviously said it could no longer certify Hong Kong's political autonomy from China. The expectation is there could be some financial sanctions, some potential visa restrictions on Chinese officials as a result of that, and also just an escalation in tough talk between the Trump administration and Xi Jinping. The question for investors, folks on Wall Street, at this point, it's no surprise that there are sanctions by the Trump administration, that there is some tough talk between the two biggest economies in the world. So the question is, do we get more severe actions from Washington? Those would be tariffs, export controls, and possible investment restrictions. So it's really a question of, do we get a continuation of this tough talk and sanctions, which has become more of a norm at this point, or do we get these more severe measures?
What are you hearing about that, and what are the expectations?
Well, so we spoke to a wide variety of folks in the U.S. and in Asia and across emerging markets today to get their reactions to this. One that was interesting, David Lobinger, who was previously at the Treasury Department focusing on China and now, of course, is at TCW in Los Angeles. His expectation was that, the sanctions and the visa restrictions are quite likely. Of course, that might have a bit of a muted effect because a lot of these Chinese officials, probably don't have too much of their funds in the U.S. But that the question of tariffs, export controls, and investment restrictions, the Trump administration might hold back on some of those more severe measures until we get more clarity as far as the details of this new law.
Ben, it's interesting for us to think about this. We've talked with a lot of folks, economists. We've talked with our own Andy Brown, who lived in China, both in Beijing and I believe in Hong Kong, and also Taiwan through his growing up years and adult years. And, he constantly reminds us, and going back to when we initially saw these protests, there's a practical implication for this, but there's also just this, it's beyond optics. There's an emotional connection, it feels like, that the global financial system has to Hong Kong and what it represents in sort of completing the world's financial picture. Am I overstating that? Or, you cover the emerging markets much more closely, obviously, than I do. But I do wonder about the almost like emotional implications here.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. A lot of folks consider there's always been this sort of tug of war as far as what's the big financial capital of Asia between Hong Kong and Singapore, especially. So there is sort of a symbolicness to this. And of course, then there's also this tension right now as far as the U.S. response about trying to, the Trump administration wants to punish China, but also I think they're looking to not cause too much harm to the people of Hong Kong, businesses of Hong Kong. So there's this tension, and that leads to a lot of questions about how strong of a response to go.
It's just kind of staggering to see that there are tensions coming. I feel like it's increased tensions, both coming out of China and the U.S. at this point. And I know we've had conversations too, Ben, with others about, whether it's rhetoric or whether it's real. And as you say, some of these things will move forward. Well, it's certainly something I know you'll be keeping a watch on, as will we. Ben, thank you so much. Ben Bartenstein, he's Bloomberg News reporter covering emerging markets Americas. And I think it's going to be one of the big stories we follow, certainly, Jason, over the next few weeks.
Well, and it's complicated. As you say, it's complicated, right? And Ben did a nice job explaining it, that you have to look at it at the backdrop of the increased tensions over trade. You have to look at it, the increased political tensions over virus response. This bleeds into intellectual property. It bleeds into science, and it bleeds into, how the global financial system ultimately works, or whether it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do, it's just interesting. I always kind of expect, in terms of China, from what we're seeing, that they want to be more on the developed world playing field, right? Yeah. And it does feel like they do in some regards, but not in others. So anyway, a lot more reporting to come, certainly, on this one. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, Jason Kelly. Let's get back to world and national news headlines. Let's get back to Ed Baxter.
All
Right, Carol, thank you. And I just want to mention a plug that our Daybreak Asia radio team, which takes over in about an hour and 20 minutes, is working very hard on putting together all the ramifications, what you were just talking about. Meanwhile, the best minds at SpaceX and NASA have postponed the first joint effort to send humans into space. It appears the next launch opportunity is Saturday. So why is this so important?
This is the biggest milestone for SpaceX, actually launching astronauts into orbit. You know, of course, Elon Musk with SpaceX, he's made it very clear that he intends to go and send humans to Mars and even put colonies on Mars. And so this is a big step towards that goal, actually getting humans into space.
Former NASA astronaut Gilroy Chow says a number of factors come into play, including weather at the Space Center, potential actions that would have taken place after or could have taken place after the launch. A bummer. They will try again. Relations just got a bit tougher between U.S., China, as Trump administration says it cannot say that Hong Kong is an autonomous state from Beijing. State Department spokesman Morgan Ortagus.
And you trust the empty promises from the Chinese Communist Party. You know, Hong Kong was supposed to remain autonomous until 2047. And when you look at the Chinese actions, they demonstrate a lack of transparency and credibility.
So where does this go? Bloomberg Sherry on.
This opens the door for a range of actions, from visa restrictions, asset freezes for top officials, even more tariffs on goods. Of course, we have seen the U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods, not on Hong Kong goods. And we know that there is more than $30 billion of trade between the United States and Hong Kong that could be affected.
The Chinese National People's Congress scheduled a vote this week. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
How long? Thanks to National Lottery Players, South Denbighshire Community Partnership are now delivering hot meals to elderly people in the community like Bob and Sarah.
Thank you.
And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier. That also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is,
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis straight from the WWE to Steve Austin's no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening. Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir. It's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
Hey, y'all, we're taking the Marty Party to a whole new level with the Marty Smith's America podcast with Gerald McCoy.
I truly believe that Carolina made a mistake letting Cam go. This is not a personal shot at Teddy Bridgewater. This could have been Andy Dalton. This could have been whoever they brought in. Cam has so much left. Somebody's really getting a great one, man. And I don't think people really understand what they're getting.
Search Marty Smith America to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. After earnings, Autodesk down 1.8%. We've got shares of Hewlett-Packard down now by 4.4%. That's HP Inc. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says he expects the company's traders to do very well in the current quarter, while not up to the pace set in the first 3 months of the year. An update on Wall Street. In fact, stocks rallied into the close with the S&P up 44 points, up 1.5%. S&P at 11-week high now of 30.36, up on optimism about the economic effects of the pandemic improving. We've got the Dow up 553, up 2.2% today. NASDAQ up 72. That was a gain of 0.8%. 10-year yield 0.69%. Gold up 0.1%, 17.12 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude now down 6.7%, 32.05 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and I would say one of the top 2 or 3 topics that we are talking about just about every day, on air, off air, Carol, is how do we get back to the office? What does it look like? And how has work fundamentally changed on the other side of this? Well, we have an expert who's been on this show before, she has all the answers. So you need look no further than our next guest, Erica Volini, back with us, Global Human Capital Leader at Deloitte Consulting. joining us on the phone from Phoenix. So no pressure, Erica, but you're here to solve all of our problems and to answer all of our questions about everything related to getting back to work. So, you got 7 or 8 minutes to accomplish this. But in all seriousness, we are starting to now think about this, but we're thinking about it through a lens, I think, for many of us that is fundamentally different from when we went into this 10 or 11 weeks ago. What are you guys hearing?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing major organizations right now make announcements around the return to work. And I think fundamentally at the core, organizations are trying to understand what work should they be doing? How can that work be done? What work can be done remotely? What work requires the need to be done on site? And whatever way work being done, how is the organization going to prepare its leaders, its infrastructure to be able to support work moving forward? Because it is going to look fundamentally different.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and actually our producer, Paul Brennan, was reminding us, you talk to us about these surveys you do every year, and I think last time we talked about the robot apocalypse and how AI can work in concert with humans, and I do think even more than ever before, we're going to need technology, right, especially in big cities, to kind of help us get back and feel comfortable about our work settings.
Exactly, and Deloitte just produced its 2020 Human Capital Report. We just released it a few weeks ago. And the title of our report is all about the integration of humans and technology. And to your point, Carol, technology is absolutely essential, but there is a recognition that technology is not enough. In fact, our survey, which surveyed over 9,000 people around the world, found that only 12% of organizations are planning on using technology like AI to replace workers. Instead, we're seeing a shift of integrating humans and technology into what we're calling super teams and really leveraging the power of that technology to augment what humans are doing. I actually think a perfect example in the context of the pandemic is contact tracing.
Yeah.
Everyone is talking about all these contact tracing technologies, but in the U.S., we're currently looking for between 100 and 300,000 human contact tracers. So it's a recognition that even though the technology is there, we need humans with empathy, with listening skills, with the ability to relate to individuals in times of stress to actually make that technology work. And that's really the mindset that we think organizations need to have as they enter this next decade.
I think people don't understand AI. And maybe we've done, everybody hasn't done the best job at explaining how it works. Like we've had some great stories in the magazine, in Business Week magazine, about AI in hospitals, how you can make it possible for workers to do even more by using kind of AI screening with patients. And I just think maybe we've got to do a better job of explaining it.
Yeah, AI is a tremendous technology that will transform the way that work's getting done, but it will not ultimately replace those essential human skills. And I think we've actually learned a lot through the pandemic about how agile, nimble, and adaptable and how important those essential human skills are. Yeah. If we think about going to the grocery store, going to the pharmacy, interacting with customer service representatives, that ability to empathize, to listen, to understand the customer's needs, and to interact with them differently, that's not something that technology is going to be able to do alone. So I think now is the time for organizations to even double down more on investing in those human skills. And one of the statistics that really worried us in our survey this year is that only 16%, so about 1 in 6 of our respondents, said that they're going to significantly invest in reskilling and focusing on continual reinvention of the workforce over the next 3 years, despite the fact that the majority of our respondents said that between half and 100% of the workforce are going to need to fundamentally change their skills. So there's just a huge disconnect there.
I feel like, Jason, we talked yesterday, Erica, with Per Yellenhammer, longtime CEO of Volvo, a few decades ago. But nonetheless, he's got a book out, and he was talking about leadership and integrity, but the importance of the blue-collar worker, kind of a responsibility of a company to workers. And I do wonder if that, I don't know if this comes up in your surveys, but I do feel like companies don't necessarily feel responsible to workers maybe like they used to. And I don't want to make a blanket statement because I don't think that's fair. And I work for a great company that takes care of its workforce. But I do wonder, is there something missing more broadly?
Well, interestingly enough, the number 1 and 2 trends in this year's survey were belonging and well-being. And I think that speaks, Carol, exactly to what you're saying, which is, and there was acknowledgement, by the way, 96% of our respondents said that it's an organizational responsibility to focus on the well-being of its workers. So there's acknowledgement that it's a responsibility, but the execution is not quite there, because only 61% of our respondents said they're not even measuring the impact of their well-being programs. So to me, the missing piece is, how do you actually take what you're stating in these mission statements that you're making and translate it to the day-to-day worker, translate it into the work themselves. And the best way to do that is design work for well-being. Make sure you're investing in reskilling programs and helping workers build new capabilities. Give them an understanding of how you're rewarding them. What's the basis for your compensation strategies? Be more open and transparent around what's going on. And that's the execution part is what's not happening right now and not translating based on our survey.
Erica, how much do you worry that in the midst of a job crisis and a health crisis, some of these things that maybe we're committed to in theory fall back in practice when we are on the other side of this and we're in an economy that's tough? People are happy to just have a job. Only about a minute left, but how much is that factoring into how you look at things?
I worry about it a lot, and I think, one of the phrases we're using is, let's return to work in the future of work, because what we're trying to communicate to organizations is that we can't just think about returning to work the same way we did before. Yeah. We have to keep an eye towards the future, and we need to make sure we're investing for the future. The war for talent has never really ended, and it will pick up again as the economy picks up, and employees and workers will remember how organizations treated them, and there's a real opportunity right now for organizations to set the tone that's going to be not just as they pandemic, but for the next decade.
Yeah. All right, we're going to leave it there. Great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for the time. Erica Volini is Global Human Capital Leader for Deloitte Consulting, joining us on the phone from Phoenix. A really interesting conversation and an important one as we all think about returning to the office, not returning to the office, and what work is going to look like. Well, for those of you listening in New York and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in D.C., Sound On with Kevin Cirilli. That is coming up next. Here, we're going to be talking Twitter. We're going to talk about ice cream, and we're going to hear from the governor of Connecticut. This is Bloomberg.